welcome to the video trailer for Athlete Regeneration. My name is Ken Dauberpool. I'm a fitness professional and masters athlete. I created this video to help not only masters athletes but people of all ages maintain healthy, supple tissue because it's not always about just doing the training and the racing, but it's about taking care of your body. This recently released video up on Amazon and iTunes Store is a 55-minute video where I take you through the whys and the hows of each of these four components. We'll be looking at myofascial release, which you probably recognize or have seen as foam rolling or using other implements. We'll look at resisted band stretching, which is a lesser known technique for really working the end range of motion in terms of increasing your flexibility. We'll look at a movement prep series, which will help you warm up. It activates muscles, it turns on the nervous system. It's a very neurologically, neuromuscularly rich series that we put together. And finally, we'll take a look at static stretching. Static stretching has been around for a long time, and most of you are familiar with it, but I will show you some nuances to it where we add rotation to our static stretching to really cut across all the fibers of the muscles and not just stretching in one plane of motion down the belly. So, let's get started. The first portion of the video, I discuss what we call self-myofascial release. You've probably seen people doing this with foam rollers like I'll be demonstrating today. But we also use other implements like tennis balls, medicine balls, or even the stick type implement to help break up tissues. So myofascial release basically is designed to release tissue densities. Some people refer to these as trigger points also. And these are restrictions in the tissue which keep you from being supple and elastic. So by applying pressure to these tissue densities, we actually allow them to soften and elongate so we get more extensibility out of our tissue. And I'll just demonstrate one of the many in the series that are demonstrated in the video today. This one is for the hips and the external rotators of the hips. So I cross my leg over while sitting on the roll, and then I'm going to roll down, dipping my hip down, and I find where, for me right there is my sweet spot. You can get that kind of feeling, and you can either stay on it for a few seconds or just roll it like you're actually ironing the tissue, trying to flatten it out and stretch it out a little bit. So that's just one of the series that I go over for the main muscle groups using foam rollers and other implements to help keep healthy, supple tissue. Next, we'll look at band-resisted stretching, and we'll take a look at that next. The next in the sequence, I discuss band-resisted stretching. This is a lesser-known technique that I learned from a physical therapist, Dave Schmitz, out of Wisconsin. And it's probably the best way that I have discovered after doing the myofascial release with the foam roller to follow up with some specific end range stretching. I'm going to demonstrate one of the series of band-resisted stretches for the hamstring, the upper insertion point, using this red band. And it's very important that you anchor your foot against something. I'll be doing it against this stand over here today, but in the video I go into detail about the setup because it's very critical that you get that correct so that you maximize the effectiveness of the exercise. So in a band-resisted stretch, what we're going to be doing is pushing using our agonist muscles on the one hand, and that allows the antagonist, in this case the hamstring, to actually relax a little bit and stretch. These are very intense exercises using these bands, but the beauty of it is you have total control over the tension, and as you get more flexible and stronger, you can start upping the band. Today I'll just be using a 1/2 inch band, but most of you have seen these bands before. They go up to 1 inch, 1.5 inches, and so forth. So let me just get into position real quick for the hamstring version of this. So I'm going to place my foot against this object where it won't move, and I want to extend my leg. Then I wrap the band around my foot in this manner. I want to grab up fairly close here, and I pull my knee to my chest, elbows to the ground, and then the exercise begins by extending the leg straight up, and we want to hold for about 3 to 5 seconds. We're not holding real long, but I'm trying to extend my leg straight. You don't see a lot of movement, but believe me, you really feel the work at the end range of motion. Very safe and effective way to work that end range. Many people are tight in their end range and have a hard time getting good work with that. So following your myofascial release with a foam roller, we come right back and do this resisted band stretching, and I think you're going to find you'll get tremendous results if you're consistent with this for about 3 to 4 weeks. Next, we'll take a look at movement prep, and I'll demonstrate just one of the exercises that we use every day in our warm-ups. The next set of movements in the athlete regeneration video we call movement prep. I borrowed this term from one of my mentors, Mark Verstegen of Athletes Performance, the director there. I learned these movements from him many years ago, and I've added a couple more to his sequence. But we use this sequence with our athletes and my clients, and I use it on a daily basis myself. The purpose of movement prep as a form of warm-up is to not only warm up the body, but to activate the nervous system. And this is something that oftentimes gets left out of warm-ups. People think if they just get on a bike or get on the treadmill and warm up, they're ready to go. That's only part of the equation. We want to make sure that we're activating the muscles. And the key to this movement prep series is that we're only holding the stretches for 3 to 5 seconds, so they're short duration. We don't want to do long duration stretching when we're trying to warm up. We'll be closing out the video with static stretching, and that's where we'll hold for a longer period of time. So the one movement that I'll demonstrate from the video today we call lunge to elbow, and it's a 2-part type movement, and it's as Mark Verstegen, the guy that I learned this from, refers to it, it's the world's greatest stretch. There's a lot of activity going on here. It's very rich that way. So let me just turn sideways and I'll show you the movement. So what we're going to do, we're going to get in a lunge type position. My hand is used for support over here on this side. I'm going to take my other elbow and I'm going to drop my hips and let myself just sink as deep as I can for 3 to 5 seconds. Then I'm going to put my hands back by my heels. I'm going to push back. I'm attempting to straighten my leg, pull my toe back, and my rear foot, I'm trying to flatten the heel. Again, 3 to 5 seconds. Then we repeat. So we drop, hold, 3 to 5 seconds, push back, and you get a great stretch. Ideally, when I demonstrate this in the video, it's best if we actually do it as a walking progression. But if you are in close quarters or in a class situation where there's not a lot of room, we'll alternate sides. So that's the example from the video series on movement prep. And the final phase we'll talk about next will be static stretching, something you're all familiar with, but we'll add some new twist to it. In the last segment of my video, Athlete Regeneration, we go over a series of static stretches. Again, most of you are familiar with static stretching, but what we find is a lot of people misapply static stretching. You really don't want to do it as part of your warm-up or the beginning of exercise. We want to, at that time, we want to excite the nervous system and get things moving. It's after training, after racing, when we want to take the time to spend on static stretching. Typically, we want to hold these stretches for 20 to 30 seconds. The thing that I'm going to introduce to you that may be a little different from what you're used to seeing is the rotational component, or adding a driver, as we call it, to the stretch. What this accomplishes is that instead of just stretching the belly of the muscle, we're actually stretching all across all the fibers of all the muscles. I'll demonstrate an example of a hamstring stretch that most of you are familiar with, and then we'll add the driver to it so you can see what I'm talking about. But we'll do this for our calves, our hamstrings, our quads, all the major muscle groups. So I'll just do this from a kneeling position. You can do it standing with your foot on the floor. I can stand and put my leg up on a bench and do this, but the concept is still the same. So from a kneeling position, if I'm going to stretch my right leg, if I get in this position, we want to keep the back straight, we don't want to round, and I want to hinge forward until I start to feel some stretch. Alright, so I'm starting to feel some stretch right there. Now typically most people will just hold this position, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But by adding a rotational component, once I get that stretch down there, notice I'm rotating my foot from side to side. In this case, the hamstring consists of 3 large muscles. If we only hold it in this straight position, we're really only stretching that middle muscle in the belly. But by adding this rotation, and you keep pulling that toe back to you, you'll really feel the stretch cross all the fibers. And I find it to be much more effective. So take your time, 20 to 30 second holds. Just get into a position where you've got enough tension on there to where you're feeling it, not that it's excruciating. All right? And that's the example of adding a rotational component to a static stretch. Check out the other examples in the Athlete Regeneration video, available on your iTunes store and on Amazon. Thanks for watching.